Good morning, warriors. Please join me in the pledge to the Bible. I pledge allegiance to the Bible, God's holy word. I will make it a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. I will hide its words in my heart, that I might not sin against God. Join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're working through our catechism question, and we're looking at the person and work of Jesus and why he is our only Savior. So the question is, did Jesus ever sin? The answer is no, he lived a sinless life. Let's try that. Did Jesus ever sin? No. The next question is, how could Christ suffer? And the answer is, Christ, the Son of God, became a man so that he could obey and suffer in our place. Let's try that one. How could Christ suffer? Christ, the Son of God, became a man so that he could obey and suffer in our place. And the ones that we learned yesterday is, what kind of life did Christ live on earth? A life of obedience, service, and suffering. So repeat after me. A life of obedience, service, and suffering. Your turn. Life of obedience. Let's put it all together. What kind of life did Christ live on earth? A life of obedience. We talked about the suffering of Christ. It was not just at the cross. His whole life he suffered because he left heaven, and being here on earth was a great hardship for him, and he did it willingly for us. Next question is, what kind of death did Jesus die? So we've just answered the question, what kind of life did Christ live on earth? And now, what kind of death did Jesus die? The answer is the painful and shameful death of the cross. So repeat after me. The painful and shameful death of the cross. Your turn. The painful and shameful death of the cross. And that is what he had to die, because we've talked about the problem of sin is that sin has a penalty. It must be paid. And the wages of sin is death. And so Christ had to take on our shame, take on our pain, so that we could be raised with him. We're also talking about sacrifice, and obviously Christ's sacrifice is the ultimate example. What if your parents told you, I want you to make sure that you play your video games before you do homework? You have to play your video games before you do your homework. Would that be something you would be for or against? Yeah, you'd be for that, right? Yeah, I'd be like, okay. Now, why would you be for that? Why would you be like, I love you, Mom, more than I ever have in my whole life? Why would you be for that if your mom told you that, Lucas? Right. It's something you prefer, right? You prefer playing video games more than homework. So here's my question. Would that be a sacrifice for you? Why not? Why would that not be a sacrifice? Doing something you prefer first. Sterling. Say it again. Right. A sacrifice is you're giving up something. It is an exchange for something. If you are not really giving up anything, it doesn't cost you anything, it's not really a sacrifice. There's a story in the Old Testament where King David, he is rescuing the Ark of the Covenant that fell into enemies' hands. They're bringing it back. And they still, in that, they were disobedient in how they were bringing the Ark of the Covenant back. And someone actually died because of their disobedience. So they stopped. They brought it to part way. They stopped and they put the Ark of the Covenant in a farmer's barn. Well, God was blessing that farmer because of that. Eventually, the nation of Israel repented. King David came to get the ark and bring it back to its rightful place. Well, that farmer was telling him, you can make a sacrifice, and I'll give you everything you need to make a sacrifice for this great and wonderful day. And King David said something that's very interesting. I will not offer to the Lord something that costs me nothing. He knew that sacrifice always cost him something. So when we talk about sacrifice here at school, when we are talking about doing things that cost you something, when your teachers are asking you to study your math facts, study your spelling, doing things that you don't prefer doing, and the easy thing to do is to grumble, to complain, to do something else you prefer first. Sacrificing is seeing the good in that and doing something that costs you something. So what is the sacrifice when you do homework? Well, the sacrifice is your time, right? You're giving up time to do something that you need to do first before you do something you prefer to do. So a warrior is somebody who willingly sacrifices. They sacrifice for the good of others. They sacrifice for their own benefit, that they know the things that will benefit them. Someone who does not sacrifice, somebody who is only going to do things that they prefer first and pushes against their responsibility, is someone who doesn't understand what it is to be a warrior and what it is to be sacrificial. So as we think about today how we can sacrifice, we sacrifice in the things of our time, we sacrifice for one another, and we do that, we're doing it out of love and gratitude for the Lord. So let's be warriors who are looking to sacrifice for the Lord and doing things as unto the Lord, and not being ones that are always looking for doing things that I prefer first. This is the last day of our hymn, so we'll turn over to sing The Light of the World is Jesus. So let's be warriors who are willing to sacrifice. And something small would be like when I have some free time, I have to make a sacrifice of I want to just doodle on my paper or read my book versus do my makeup work or do some extra work. Those little sacrifices that you make for doing the right thing, God will continue to bless that. And as always, remember our rule is to do your work. Let the Lord be with you.
You shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy. And all the trees of the fields will clap their hands. And all the trees of the fields will clap their hands. The trees